Hi, team.
Hey, Kayla.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hanging in
Good. Hi, everybody.
there. Hey, everybody. I like this.
Nina's here. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We'll wait for everyone to join. Kayla and I were just backstage talking about how we're both in Boston and the sun just came out after many days of gray skies. So, where is everyone joining from? Drop that in the chat. We'd love to see. Oh, Christina's in Boston as well.
Excellent.
Chatham, Dallas, love it.
Nice.
Love to see it. You know, Nina's on the vineyard.
Lucky.
Yeah, right? Got a lot of East Coast, Cape Cod.
I know.
Cape Cod friends.
Just down in Chatham, actually, at Chatham Bars Inn. I love that place.
It's an awesome place.
Oh,
it's beautiful.
So it's fantastic out there. We were also saying for everybody who's joining as well, if as people start to trickle in, if you have some excess rum, which I hope you do, with your 3 bottles, feel free to step away and make yourself a little cocktail or mixed drink or something, as we're going to be chatting about rum for a little while. So have something to sip on. I got myself a little rum old fashioned, so feel free to step away and do that as well.
Love it. Let's see. Leslie's on the lake in Michigan. I read that as Lake Michigan.
Lake Michigan.
I don't think that is. I don't think that's correct. All right. I think we can go ahead and probably get started. So, hi everyone. My name is Diana. Diana from Alyce. You probably have received some emails from me so far, but I want to welcome everyone to the session today. We have Kayla Quigley with us, who's going to be taking us through our rum tasting event. Kayla is the brand ambassador to Flor de Caña. Did I say that right?
You did it. You crushed it.
Awesome. Rum. She works out of Boston, and she's been working in the spirits industry for 11 years, developing cocktails and educational programs for rum, gin, and whiskey bars throughout the Northeast. So, Kayla, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you and let you get started.
Fantastic. Awesome. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. As Diana said, my name is Kayla Quigley. You can call me Kay. You can call whatever you would like to call me, Rum Lady. Totally fine. I am the brand ambassador living out of Boston for Flor de Caña Rum. As you can see, all of my wonderful Flor de Caña decor didn't come with host events. And so today I'd like to take you through what rum is and sort of walk us through the preliminary portion of that. And then obviously enjoy some Flor de Caña rum that we're going to be tasting today. So the sort of run of show and the flow of things, this is incredibly casual. So please feel free to ask any questions in the session, in the chat over there. I can see it from a distance, so I will try to respond to any questions that y'all throw in there. Comments, concerns, whatever it is. And if you have any questions, again, please throw them in so I'm not talking the entire time and we have a little bit more of a dialogue. So I'm going to ask a preliminary question. What is everybody's favorite rum? And if you're not a rum drinker, feel free to throw that into the chat as well, because hopefully you will be one by the time we leave today. So feel free to throw that into the chat. All right, Myers Dark. All right, Beth, I like it. Excellent. Anybody else? Don Q Silver. Some Goslings in there. Excellent. Sailor Jerry. Why LOL? No, Sailor Jerry's delicious. All right. So these are all, the reason I asked this question before we start talking about rum is that these are very, very different styles of rum that y'all have thrown into the chat, and very different from what we're going to be tasting today. And the purpose of me asking that question is ultimately to present the really large fact that rum is an incredibly varied spirit. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, rum can be made really anywhere in the world. And unlike a lot of other spirits that we've become very familiar with sort of the craft movement, for lack of a better term, right? We have all of these small craft distilleries that have popped up in the US and globally. Rum has no geographical designation or indication. It can be made anywhere, in any country, in any state, in any region, Whereas think of bourbon, for example. Bourbon you have to be made in the US, right? It has to be 51% more of corn in its makeup. It has to be aged a certain way. So there's all of these rules that are very clearly laid out for the production of bourbon. Rum is the Wild West. We have none of that in rum. So as you're enjoying your Don Q or your Goslings or your Sailor Jerry, your Myers, all of those products are going to be very different from one another. And any rum that you're going to try moving forward is going to be very different from what we've tried today with Flor de Caña. So I want you to keep that in mind, and I want you to open up sort of your expectations of what rum can be and what rum is, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions for what rum actually is, right? So let's start there. What the heck is rum? So rum, again, has very loose definition. Rum is a distillate, so something that is distilled from sugarcane. That's it. What a lame definition. That's all we have. So again, there's a lot of room for interpretation. And that's the EU definition. That's the one defining thing for what rum is. Now, rum has to be made from sugarcane. If anybody's ever gone to the Caribbean, Central America, South America, Florida, any of these like equatorial, really hot climates, you've probably seen sugarcane. Sometimes at Whole Foods, they have sugarcane imported as well. And so basically sugarcane is this bamboo-y type stalk that has sugar fibers inside and liquid sugar. And so the sort of rough process of how we produce rum, we'll start there, is essentially what you do is you cut down those sugarcane stalks, and that grass, that bamboo, and basically you press out the sugar liquid. And you can enjoy that on its own. It's basically liquid sugar. Think like simple syrup in its purest form. And then what you do is you put that through a whole production process of refining sugar. So before we get to our rum, there's a whole step of refining sugar. And that's a whole different conversation. It's a whole different process, which we'll kind of dive into as we talk about Flor de Caña a little bit later. But basically what it is essentially we're making table sugar. We're making that granulated stuff that you are putting in your coffee or in your baked goods and those sort of things. And there's different levels of refining sugar that get them to be more purified, whiter. You're going to have brown sugar, turbinado sugar, demerara sugar, and then that refined sugar that we put into our coffee. So as that refining process is happening, we're left with one thing. In theory, two things. We're actually left with molasses. And those of us who are in New England know molasses very well. Molasses is that thick brown goop that comes from sugar refining process. And it's delicious. It's really sweet, but it's kind of funky, right? It's just like you can use it in baked goods. We love our Boston baked beans here, right? We have molasses cookies, all of those things. But molasses is the core of what makes rum, okay? So this is like liquid gold for rum. Bourbon, it's corn. For rum, it's molasses and sugarcane, okay? So commit that to memory when we're talking about rum. When we go into the process of actually producing rum, what we do is we take that molasses from the sugar mill, and what we end up doing is we add water to it. Think about it in a big bucket, okay? And so we add water to it, and then as we add water, we also add yeast. And so what is yeast? Yeast is a bacteria, essentially. It's a live organism that varies. It comes from all different plants. It comes from all different fruits, vegetables, all of this stuff. And what we do is we introduce the yeast into that fermentation, into our big giant bucket of molasses, water, and yeast. And what happens is the yeast eats all the sugars. And this is going to be really, really important. That's the one thing that yeast eats. I'm not going to get incredibly technical, but just it's important as we start to talk about Flor de Caña on a more technical note down the line. And so what it does is those yeasts eat the sugar and they produce two things. They produce alcohol, which we want, right? Has anybody been to, and please feel free to chat in, has anybody been to a brewery tour? Because you've seen this process in brewery tours. So what you've done is you've gone to those fermentation tanks, right? And you've seen all that bubbling happening on top. And so what's happening there is the yeast is actually active and it's creating alcohol, okay? And it's the same thing in wine, exactly, thank you. So fermentation is gonna be the exact same process all the time. It's essentially creating alcohol, okay? And then we're also gonna have all those bubbles on top is CO2. It's the gas, it's another byproduct of the fermentation process. So at this point in rum, we kind of have sugar beer. That's essentially what it is. It's a really low alcohol rum. But we want it to be higher proof, right? We want to be able to put it in cocktails. We want to distill it. So what we do is we go into distillation. Distillation is essentially purifying your alcohol, and it creates higher alcohol content, okay? And so what we do is we distill, and then we age. And so distillation will happen for different lengths of time. It'll happen in different processes, right? There's multiple ways that you can distill. There's different types of stills. Again, we're not going to talk about all the technical stuff there. But then you go into aging, okay? And aging, despite what people say about like something being bottle aged or what have you, unless it's wine and champagne, you can't age something in glass, okay? So every time that you're seeing something with an age statement on your bottles in any spirit, rum, bourbon, whatever it is, tequila, doesn't matter, it's going to sit in some sort of a wood, okay? So aging always happens in wood. And that's essentially your process for rum production, okay? So it goes from sugarcane fields, it goes to fermentation, distillation, aging, and then bottling, and then we put it into our delicious cocktails. Does anybody have any questions on sort of that really blanket understanding of what rum production is? There's a lot of technical, nerdy stuff that we can throw in there, but I'd rather drink with y'all than just have this whole, technical conversation. So if there's any questions that y'all have on that, please feel free to throw it into the chat, and we can absolutely address those. So that's, again, a really overarching view of what the heck rum is, right? Rum can falter a little bit and change in the production process depending on where it's produced, depending on who's producing it, and depending on the style that you're going for. So what we're going to be drinking today is rum Flor de Caña. And now Flor de Caña is a rum that comes from Nicaragua. Nicaragua is a medium-sized country that is in Central America. And it rests between Honduras and Costa Rica. And it's surrounded on both sides by water. On the western side, you also have this wonderful chain of volcanoes. And this is going to become very important as we talk about Flor de Caña and what makes Flor de Caña unique. Okay, so when did Flor de Caña get its start? Is this everybody's first time trying Flor de Caña as well? Show of yes or no. Fantastic, yes. This is not my first time trying Flor de Caña, just so everybody knows. Okay, so we got a lot of yeses going on here. Fantastic. So I'm going to take a little deep dive into what Flor de Caña is for us, so that we have a better understanding of the history and the liquid itself. So Flor de Caña got its start in 1890. So we are 131 years old. And essentially what happens is our founder came from Genoa, Italy to Nicaragua. And he went into basically a business venture with a gentleman that we probably all know the name, Cornelius Vanderbilt. So Cornelius Vanderbilt, we know the Vanderbilt family, right? In pop culture more so than anything else. So he went into business with him, and essentially what he was doing is he took his inheritance, which was about $20,000 at the time, and this is in the 1870s, and invested in a sort of a trade and commuter route. So if we go back to like our fourth grade history lessons, right? What was happening in the early 1800s in the US was the gold rush. Okay, so everybody was trying to get from east to west. And there wasn't really an effective route to do so. There was no real way to get there. Okay, it would take you about 180 days by horse and carriage, certainly much longer if you were trying to get there by foot, which would be a death trap. So what they did is they created a trade route from New Orleans all the way down through Nicaragua. So if you go through the Gulf, you can connect to Nicaragua. And Nicaragua has this wonderful little inlet through the river into the lake. And in the center of Nicaragua is this lake that fits Puerto Rico 3 times. Okay, so it's massive. Looks like the ocean when you're on it. And then on the other side of that lake is this tiny, tiny little strip of land that you can traverse quite easily. And so they created this route that allowed folks to travel from east to west in 36 to 40 days rather than 180, if not longer. And so you can imagine that they made a whole bunch of money, okay? And so Cornelius Vanderbilt, we all know, went on to other ventures. And what our founder did is he ended up opening up a sugar mill. Remember our conversation about what the heck is rum? Where does rum come from? Rum comes from sugar, okay? And so he had no intention of making rum. Instead, what he was doing is he just wanted to make a whole lot of money making sugar. And we all know that there's a lot of money in sugar in general. But what he found was that after the harvest, which for Flor de Caña is from October to April of sugarcane, he found that he could take some of that molasses and create rum to celebrate the harvest with his workers and with his employees. And we all have probably some local favorites. I would imagine I have plenty of bottles on my bar that's over here of sort of local craft distilleries. And what ended up happening is kind of this not critical, more local acclaim, right, of the spirit. And people said, wow, this stuff's actually pretty good. What is this? What is all this about? And so you flash forward now 130 years, Flor de Caña has grown into a global rum brand from this tiny little distillery that was only producing a couple of barrels a year. Okay. And obviously that's happened with a lot of PR, new technical developments, all of those things. But what's really unique is that we're still owned by the Pelas family, our founders family. Okay. So we are 5th generation family owned, which I'll give you a dramatic statistic, as we like to call it. There are only 3 in 10,000 companies make it to a 5th generation. Okay, so not only are we 131 years old, we've never sold out. So we're still 5th generation family owned. What's also unique about the brand is that we are still located in that exact same space in Nicaragua. Okay, so as you can see behind me, we have this beautiful volcano, and this is the San Cristobal. So the San Cristobal is the most active volcano in Nicaragua. As I said, there's this beautiful chain of volcanoes that runs down the western side. And what's really cool is that this volcano lends itself to the rum. And I'll talk about what that means as we start to taste. So we're still 5th generation family owned, and we're single estate. Does anybody know what single estate means? Don't Google it before you type it. Essentially, single estate is that it is produced from field to bottle. Okay, so it's a single production. So we still own and operate the sugar fields that produce the sugar and the molasses that produces our rum. Okay, and this is incredibly unique in the spirits world. A lot of times you have folks that will buy spirits or buy the raw materials, in our case, sugar, molasses, sugar cane, right? They'll buy that from somebody else, and then they'll distill in their smaller distillery. For us, we have 37,000 acres of sugarcane now. So we've definitely expanded over the 131 years, to say the least. We're still owned and operated by the Pelas family. So single estate, 5th generation family owned. These are 2 incredibly unique things in the rum world, and particularly for Flor de Caña. So why don't we start to taste some rum, and we'll talk about the production process. So we're going to start with our 4-year. Before I start diving into what Flor de Caña is and talking about these in particular in production and in taste, and as we go through that, does anybody have any questions up until this point? I'm throwing a lot of information about the spirit at you, so please feel free. There are no silly questions. Okay, perfect. Again, feel free. I'm sorry. Okay, great. Let's see. How do I make what you're drinking? This is a rum old fashioned. So it's essentially a twist on a bourbon or a rye old fashioned. So I'm using a little bit of bitters, Angostura and orange bitters, 2 dashes into my cup, and then ice, a little bit of sugar. I did liquid sugar, so simple syrup. And then I'm using our 7-year, so 2 ounces of 7-year. And I just put all that right into the glass and I stir it. And then I put a little citrus garnish over the top. So that's very, very simple cocktail to execute, which at the end, we'll talk more about cocktails and how to utilize the brand a little bit more. Thank you for that question. Who distributes us in the US? So we are what we call an agency brand because we are independently owned. We are an agency brand with William Grant & Sons. So William Grant & Sons owns brands like Hendrick's, Milagro, Reyka Vodka, Glenfiddich, Belveni, Sailor Jerry, to point that out a little bit from earlier. So we're a part of a much larger company, but we are independently owned. So that's why I have my job, to promote this one particular brand, to work with them and to share all of this lovely knowledge on Flor de Caña. So thank you for that question as well. And then in terms of where you can buy it, it will be very different from state to state, which we can talk about later as well. So Flor de Caña is produced exactly how I told you rum is produced, okay? And we are going to take that molasses from our sugar mill. Again, we own and operate the sugar mill. And we sell to sugar companies that we have a bunch of, I'm sure, NDAs with, so I'm not able to say who. But we sell as a wholesaler some sugar to other folks. And we take back to the distillery, we take back the molasses, but we also take back something else that most companies do not. We take back the sugar cane, the husks, okay? Basically the bark. So after we've pressed out the sugar cane, we take that liquid and that's what we want to create sugar. But then we're left with all that scrap, okay? All of that, like essentially, again, like the bark. And so what we do is we take that back to the distillery as well. And when we distill, we're taking that molasses, right? As I talked about, we're adding in those yeast and all of that. But the bagasse is that what we call the sugarcane scraps is called bagasse, okay, in Spanish. And it is essentially going to be used to power a steam turbine. And so what we do is everything is distilled with 100% renewable energy for Flor de Caña. So we light that on fire, that boils up some water, that powers the steam engine, and from there, we power the entire distillery. So again, we have 37,000 acres of sugarcane. We're in no shortage of that raw material for that production. Okay, so this is very unique to us as well. I mean, how many of us are eco-conscious right now, right? As we're trying to eliminate a little bit of our carbon footprint individually. We're trying to recycle more, reuse, all of these things. Flor de Caña has been doing that for years. And this has been for the past 15 plus years that we've been practicing this. So the first that we're going to taste is our 4-year. So this is your clear, okay? The clear silver rum that you have. Some rums will call themselves blanco. Some will call them silver. Some will not say anything. They'll just be a clear rum. It doesn't matter which way that is sliced in terms of being on a label. It's all basically the exact same thing, okay? So kind of to demystify that. So how do we produce this particular rum? Well, we go into fermentation. As I said, that big bucket with our molasses, our water, and our yeast. What we do is we let the yeast eat all of those sugars, okay? We let them eat all of the sugar that is in that molasses. And what we do is we let that do that to the furthest extent, okay? What that means is that we just let all of the yeast do it, and then they all die. And that's it. Then we are done with fermentation. That takes about 5 to 7 days, okay? So it's not a very long process. And then we distill. And now when we distill something, how many times have you seen something on, say, a vodka label, right? 20 times distilled, 10 times distilled, 100 times distilled, right? Whatever it is. Why would they be boasting all of this, these distillation runs? Why would people talk about that? Well, the idea is that you're basically purifying your liquid, right? You're purifying it to the maximum level of purity that you can get. Flor de Caña distills 5 times, okay? Only 5. And the reason that we do it only 5 times is that we don't want to strip it of all of its character. Vodka, in comparison, should be something that's incredibly neutral, right? You don't want to taste your vodka. That's how we define a really nice vodka, right? We don't have that ethanol, that alcohol burn. Whereas your lesser brands, right, the things we all drank in college, are gross and they taste like alcohol, rubbing alcohol, all of that. I can promise you I've drank those many times over. And you know a bad spirit when you have one. And that's coming from your distillate. Hold on 1 second. I think I lost you for a second there. All right, there we are. Sorry about that. Computer technical issues. So essentially, what we do is we only distill 5 times. And how I'm going to show you that this is a nice spirit still, although it's distilled 5 times, is I want you to take your glass. You're only just a little, like maybe an ounce into your glass, okay? What I want you to do, which you'd probably never do with a straight spirit at room temperature and a clear spirit nonetheless, I want you to take a big old whiff of your glass. I know you think I'm crazy, but just trust me. And when you smell spirits, for those of us who do not know, keep your mouth open, okay? The reason being that you don't want to burn, it's alcohol, right? You don't want to burn your nostrils with the alcohol. So what you're going to do is just open your mouth and allow those vapors to kind of all work out within the olfactory system. So just big old whiff. this does not burn your eyes. This did not burn your nostrils, right? And if it did, please let me know. We'll get you a new bottle. This should not have done that. And so the reason for that is because we distill that 5 times. Additionally, the reason for that is because what we've done is we've actually aged this after we distill in what we use is ex-bourbon barrel, and we've aged it for 4 years. Okay, most of your white rums that are on the market are not aged or are aged for a very, very short amount of time. And what aging does when it sits in a barrel is it imparts some flavors, right? Some softness. It will give your rum a little bit of a sweeter quality and give your whatever spirit it is a touch of a sweeter woody quality, right? And for us, we only do it for 4 years, but we are one of the oldest white rums in the market. Now, you're going to say to me, well, Kayla, how, if it's aged, then why is it white? Well, what we do is we charcoal filter. So we basically put it through a Brita filter to remove the color. You can remove color, but you cannot remove the time that it has sat in the barrel, and you cannot remove the flavor, right? So we're stripping color, but we can't take away the time or the characteristics of the rum itself. So let's try our Flor de Caña 4-year if you haven't already. So when you sip spirits, 2 sips, it's kind of the general rule. You take 1 so that your mouth gets used to alcohol. And then you take another so that you have sort of the full flavor and profile. Okay, so we're going to take 1 sip first. You don't need to do a wine swish, right? You don't need to do any of that. And then we're going to take another little sip as well. So I can give you my tasting notes, right? I can tell you what I taste, but I want to hear and see what you guys have to say. This is everybody, I would imagine. Most of us, it's our first time trying Flor de Caña 4-year. So what are your thoughts? Feel free to chime in. And it's okay if you don't like it. It's okay to not like a straight spirit. I won't be offended. So for me, for this particular spirit, I end up getting more floral. It's very light, right? Much lighter than you would expect a rum to be. And it's not very sweet, which is a very important thing for Flor de Caña. So we are what we call a Spanish dry style rum, okay? So this is a not sweet style of rum. This is great in cocktails like mojitos, and is great in cocktails like daiquiris, all of those things. This is what you might just have for your frozen cocktails at home and what you might enjoy at a bar if you had ordered a mojito, okay? So this is our entry level. This is the youngest rum that we produce. So let's move on to our 7-year. So our 7 is the next step up, right, in terms of the premium tastings of rum. Now, what is giving it that color? Well, again, it's going to sit in ex-bourbon barrel, okay? So we're actually, think about this as a bourbon. We're taking on all of the color of a bourbon. We're taking on all of the color from that barrel, right? That wooden barrel is giving us all of this color. And this is really important for us. So Flor de Caña 7 is produced the exact same way as Flor de Caña 4-year, okay? All of the things that I talked about from fermentation, distillation, all of that stuff. It's going to go into a barrel and it's just going to sit there for full 7 years, okay? And now this is really important because, as I said, we're located at the base of the San Cristobal, okay? Why does that matter? Well, if you think about, I'm in Boston, really pretty cold here most of the time, right? We can all agree that New England kind of sucks when it comes to weather. It's pretty chilly here. And, we only get a couple of months of nice, hot, humid weather. Well, in Nicaragua, it is hot and humid all of the time. Now, this might sound like a crazy analogy, but bear with me for this. When you are cold, okay, think of yourself in New England, wherever you live. If you get cold, what happens to your skin and to you physically, right? Your skin, you kind of tighten up, right? And you walk around like this. The same thing happens to a barrel. When it's cold, the pores of the barrel of that wood gets really tight. Think about your doors in your house, right? In the winter versus the summer. When it's really hot in your house, the door expands The same thing happens to wood in the barrel. And the same thing happens to us if you think about yourself as a barrel. I know, again, crazy analogy, but your pores expand. You start to sweat. You kind of do one of these as you're walking around, right? The same idea happens to the barrel that we're aging in. So what happens when you're in hotter climates versus colder climates for aging, say at the base of an active volcano, is that you end up having this really beautiful barrel integration, is what we call it. The barrel is open and it's breathing and it's allowing for the liquid to touch the barrel a lot more. I like to do this comparison with, say, a scotch. Okay, I was just looking over there to see if I have a scotch that I could showcase, but none that I can see from here. If you were to look at, say, a 12-year scotch compared to this bottle, this is a very dark liquid, right? Dark amber, mahogany colors. If you were to put a 12-year scotch next to this, it wouldn't have the same sort of color. It would be very pale in comparison. Okay, and now why would that be? Well, it would be that way because in Scotland it's a lot colder. Okay, so it's not going to have the same barrel integration. Essentially, you're going to have to age your product for much longer in Scotland to get the same effect versus Nicaragua, versus Florida, versus Texas, for those of you in Dallas, right? So this is really important when it comes to aging. We have to think about where we're aging. So this is really important for Flor de Caña. So this is our 7-year, okay? Our 7-year, for us, for those of us who are bourbon drinkers or whiskey drinkers, is going to drink a lot more like a rye, okay? It's going to have what I like to call barrel spice. It's not going to be spiced like a Sailor Jerry or a Captain Morgan because we don't add anything to the rum, right? We're not adding those spices in. However, it's going to have sort of a white pepper and black pepper spice. So I invite y'all to try our 7-year. Give it a little smell. Again, still no ethanol burn, right? My eyes do not hurt. My nose does not hurt as I'm enjoying this. And then let's try it. So this drinks much more like a whiskey, right? I think that one thing that I would love for us to take away from this is essentially that rum does not have to be overwhelmingly sweet, okay? This is going to drink much more like a whiskey, a bourbon, a rye, what have you, rather than a aggressively sweet, sugary rum, okay? And I don't know if you all agree with that. Please feel free to write into the chat on tasting notes on your thoughts on the two of these. Do you like the 4-year versus the 7-year better? How would you like to use it? Smoother than you thought? That's fantastic. Thank you. I like the enthusiasm on delicious, even though I know that it was an accident. A beautiful fall drink. Yeah, exactly, right? You think about the idea that you put bourbon and dark spirits into fall, autumnal drinks. It's the same thing. You can definitely use rum in those sort of cocktails as well. I prefer the 7 to the 4-year. I think that they're very different, right? We're using them in very different ways. They're not necessarily interchangeable. And I like the 7-year because it does have something of more of those like autumnal notes, like you were saying, those spices, they're there. And I think that it works really well for just sipping on the rocks or neat as well. So I'm glad that y'all are here enjoying some rum with us. And I'm very excited that we're going to be tasting the 18-year. So the 18-year is going to be the final that we taste, but I want to pause, kind of give our palates a rest for a moment and talk to you a little bit more about what Flor de Caña is as a brand and why I am very passionate about this brand because as I've talked about the production process, that's fine. I've talked to you about the terroir, where it's produced, cool, great, right? These are all very simple things that every brand will talk about. There's something really, really important about Flor de Caña that I would like to share with you. In addition to being family owned, right? 5th generation family owned, in addition to being single estate, there's something that really sets Flor de Caña apart. And if you allow me, I'd like to share that with you. And that is that we are fair trade certified and we are carbon neutral. Okay. So let's talk about fair trade first. What is fair trade? Can you think of any other brands that are fair trade? Not spirits in general, But who is a fair trade brand? Feel free to type it into the chat. Coffee, exactly. We think about coffee a lot of the time. We think about chocolates, right? Some clothing companies, right? What does that actually mean to be fair trade, right? We see it in stores, we see the logo, but we don't really know what it actually means. And maybe we do, which good on you for doing the research. But for those of you who don't know, I'm going to tell you. So what fair trade is in Fair Trade USA, it was started by a gentleman whose name is Paul Rice. He's a very, very sweet guy. And essentially what he wanted to do is he recognized a disparity sort of between workers in agricultural settings and the final product and the markup on final products. Okay. So Starbucks is probably one of the best examples of this that we can have top of mind. When Starbucks hit the market, essentially what had happened was you had coffee shop here, Dunkin' Donuts, whatever, other brand it was. Here. Okay. Starbucks came to the market and said, we're going to charge double the price of what you have on your coffee. And everybody's like, what the heck? Why am I paying so much money for this coffee? My dog would like to participate in this conversation. Sorry about that. So essentially what happened is they said, we're going to charge a little bit more money. Okay. And we're going to give that money back somehow, right? We're going to find a way to do that. We're going to give it back to those who actually produce the product. And so what happened with Starbucks is that they had these single origin coffee farms so that they knew exactly where that coffee was coming from, the coffee beans, and they knew exactly who had actually procured that coffee bean for you. And what they did is that they ended up saying, okay, we're going to charge a premium, right? A couple extra dollars per cup, maybe $1, what have you, to the consumer, right? To us. And that money, on behalf of Fair Trade, a third-party organization, took that money and gave it back to the actual farmers and to the community in which that coffee had come from. That's only one part of fair trade. And this is exactly what Flor de Caña does. Okay, so I said we are single estate. Okay, so we know who's producing our rum, we know who's harvesting our sugarcane, and we have a commitment to sustainability. So, what is fair trade? So, fair trade is a holistic model of sustainability. We've just talked about, in terms of Starbucks, right, as our example, that money comes back to the employees, so the people who actually produce that product. Well, the same is true for Flor de Caña. So every time you buy a bottle of Flor de Caña, you're giving back to the community in Nicaragua. So we don't see a portion of the money that you pay for Flor de Caña, that our bars pay for, or anything like that. That money gets directly shipped back to a community fund in Nicaragua. We don't touch it. Okay. So that's one part of it. And I think that's what most people think of. The other part is fair wage and labor standards, right? That's a huge one for fair trade. So what does that mean in terms of Flor de Caña? So as I said, we have 37,000 acres of sugarcane. Okay. We all know that the sugar industry, sugarcane in general, has an incredibly dark history in terms of exploitative labor. Well, Flor de Caña does not do that. So what we do is we do not use contract labor at all. So we don't pay somebody just for the season to come in and harvest our sugarcane. If you work for Flor de Caña and our sugar mill, you are a full-time employee year round, even though that the harvest period is from October to April. Okay, unique in the sugarcane world. Additionally, if you work for Flor de Caña, you are afforded full-time benefits. You're paid double minimum wage in Nicaragua. You are paid sick leave. You are paid paternity, maternity, all of those things. In 1913, we opened up a company hospital, or excuse me, a company school, which goes from kindergarten all the way up to high school. Okay, so if you work for Flor de Caña, your kids can go to school for free. And it's an incredible socioeconomic development in Nicaragua. And that's from 1913. In 1958, we opened up a company hospital. Excuse me. We opened up a company hospital. And that company hospital, the same is afforded to those that work for Flor de Caña. You are ill, you go to the hospital for free, not a problem. If you are, your family is pregnant, you go to the hospital for free, no issues at all. To paint this picture a little bit better, the Maestro Nero, who works for Flor de Caña, our master blender and distiller, Tomas Cano, his son was born in the company hospital, and he now works for Flor de Caña. Tomas Cano has worked for Flor de Caña for 33 years. So we have a commitment to the folks that work for us. I've only been with the company for 3 years, and I'm incredibly young in the company in terms of my longevity with the company. So I'd just like to share that, because I think that we often take the humanity and the agriculture out of spirits, and we just kind of see them as these branding opportunities, right? We see it as a brand that sits on a shelf, but there's people behind who make the brand, and I want to share that with you because I think it's incredibly important. And so I hope that you take that with you as well, that being a fair trade rum company is incredibly important to our brand and to the ethos of who we are. And so as we kind of sit with that fact, why don't we taste our 18 year, which falls into what we call an ultra premium rum category. So you've just tasted our 7 year. Now, there are very few bourbons out there that are 7 years old anymore, right? There are very few spirits out there with age statements any longer. If you were to purchase a 18-year Scotch or an 18-year bourbon, you would be well within the $100 mark. For Flor de Caña, you're a little closer to the $50 mark. Now, why is that? Well, because we make so much rum. It's ridiculous. We have so much rum. And as I was talking about earlier, we're able to age our rum and get so much barrel extraction out of our rum that our 18 year is going to have this incredible, wonderful flavor, and we want to share that. Okay. So let's give our 18 year a taste and let me know what you think about this. So do the same thing. This is going to be a drastically different rum than what we've just tasted. Is this anybody's first time trying a spirit that's 18 years old? What's the eldest spirit that you guys have tried? Actually, that's a good question. $25, first time, excellent. Johnny Walker, okay, great. And of those that responded 25, what was the 25 year that you had tasted? Was it a Scotch? Excellent. So what you're going to find, and I'm going to refer to those of you who have tried the 25 year or port or what have you, Irish whiskey, excellent. Ireland and Scotland have very mild climates, right? As we were talking about, those scotches that you tried were probably much lighter in color, and they probably didn't have the same level of barrel integration, right? That's what I keep saying in terms of that barrel spice, that barrel flavoring. And so this is going to pick up a lot of the barrel notes, and this is going to be incredibly smooth, right? So everything that we're tasting, by the way, is all at 40% alcohol. Okay, so there's no differentiation between the alcohol content in any of the spirits that we're tasting. So if the 7 year, which I think I saw a comment earlier, tasted a little bit like hotter, for example, right? Maybe it tasted a little stronger. It has nothing to do with the alcohol content. It just has to do with the barrel, right? So it tastes, you're getting that barrel spice, which is making your palate kind of perceive something as a little bit on the hotter side, as we like to call it in the spirits industry. I find that our 18 year goes down very easily. It is incredibly smooth. It does have a caramel smell, and that's coming from, think about bourbon notes, right? What are the bourbon notes? Vanilla, caramel, again, white pepper, black pepper, those sort of things. This sits for 18 years in ex-bourbon barrel. So essentially what you've got going on here is a whole lot of barrel time. So you're pulling in all of those flavors that are going to be familiar to you in the bourbon world, or in anything that is aged in ex-bourbon cask or ex-bourbon barrel. What do you think of the taste? Is this anybody's favorite out of what we've tried? It's my favorite, I'm not gonna lie. It's incredibly smooth, right? And when we say smooth, I think that it's an overarching term, and it speaks to everybody's palate a little bit different in terms of, this is going to be something that you can sip on neat on the rocks. It doesn't have that burn again, right? That's what we're talking about when we say smooth. And so this is very important. I'd like to open up the conversation for us. If this is everybody's favorite, sort of what do we take away from Flor de Caña as a spirit? Okay. Well, we've just tasted our 4, 7, and our 18. We produce rums from 4, 7, 12, 18, and 25 years old. And now we also produce a 30-year-old. So we are definitely in the extremely aged spirits category. And so what I'd like to open up the conversation to, if you wouldn't mind joining in the chat, is how would you like to drink these spirits? Has this changed? So question number 1, has this changed the way that you have perceived rum? And if so, how did you think about rum previously? And I'll give y'all a moment to chime into the chat there. Thinking about rum as a mixer, a new appreciation, excellent. Not as a sipping drink, excellent. Baking, excellent. The geographical component, excellent. And so essentially, again, rum has this wonderful, we've only just tasted Flor de Caña. We could sit here for hours and hours and hours and talk about rum as a whole. It is a very varied spirit, again, not just geographically, but in terms of, it's just profiles across the board. Every rum is going to taste a little bit different, okay? So we've just tasted 3 just from Flor de Caña, and they vary greatly. Can you imagine if we were to try 3 from varying distilleries around the world, right? How different that would be. That's something to take away from this, right? If you've perceived rum, and this is kind of the common misconception often, is that rum has to be a spirit that is mixed with like your rum and Coke, right? Or that it has to be something that you enjoy on a beach, or it's only a summer drink, something like that, right? I think these are kind of the common misconceptions when it comes to rum. It's overly sweet. There's a ton of sugar. Here's a fun fact about Flor de Caña and about most rums in general. There's no sugar added. So if you were to look this up on any of your fitness apps, what have you, this is a no sugar rum. Flor de Caña is keto friendly, if anybody's doing that thing. So the reason being that we don't add any sugars. Okay, so this plays very well into cocktails. It plays very well into winter drinks, fall, spring, summer, however you would like to work it. It will work in mojitos, in daiquiris, where frozen drinks, what have you, sipping, neat on the rocks, baking, however. Okay, so I hope that you tasting these spirits has changed the way that you perceive rum, and maybe aligns it a little bit more with the whiskey. That's sort of the goal here, right? You always assume that rum has to be enjoyed in the summer. It can be enjoyed year round. You can enjoy it neat, you can enjoy it in a cocktail. So my next question is sort of what do y'all enjoy in terms of cocktails with rum? Dark and stormies, of course, I see that. Welcome to the screen, Diana.
Hi, thanks. Thought I'd join you for the Q&A.
Yeah, why not? Welcome in. What were your thoughts, Diana?
I really liked the 18. I can't say that I've ever, right? I can't say that I've ever sipped on anything that old, but I can recall. So I'm excited to add these to my bar collection.
I love it. Excellent.
Yeah.
So again, the question stands, everybody, sort of what cocktails would you enjoy with rum, or what are you interested in trying with rum? Now that you've seen sort of what some other rums can offer outside of something like a Gosling's or a spiced rum, right? What are you going to make later, Diana?
I was Googling different recipes and
Googling, I'm right here.
I know. If they're if it was hot enough, I think I would break out the blender and maybe make some daiquiris or do something like that. But I think my sister and I are definitely going to make some cocktails. We just have to go to the store, get some supplies.
I like it. Well, that's actually a really good lead into sort of what your home bar can have for cocktails as well. So you guys have some rum at home now, which is fantastic. In terms of just a couple of things, I don't know where y'all are in terms of at-home cocktail execution, but I would recommend a couple of things, which is just always use fresh citrus, right? So just buy the lemon, buy the lime and juice. You can do a hand squeeze. It's totally fine. Fresh juice is always going to be better if you have the opportunity to do it. You don't need to buy simple syrup. It is simply sugar and water. So don't waste your money on pre-bottled. If you do not want to, it's totally fine. It's up to you. And then a couple of staples that I would keep in home would be a bottle of bitters, Angostura bitters. Okay, I would keep a bottle of vermouth as well, sweet vermouth in particular. If you enjoy Manhattans and those sort of stirred, spirit-forward drinks, rum plays very well, and especially our 7 and our 18 plays very, very well into like a Manhattan-type cocktail, which is, if you're using rum, called a palmetto. And so I would recommend having that on hand as well. But I would love to hear from everybody and see what your thoughts are, what you're going to be making some Flor de Caña rum cocktails. How are you going to be utilizing this? Everybody's like, please stop talking, Kayla. We don't want to drink rum anymore.
Looks like a rum Manhattan. And what else do we get? I think Nina's just going to be sipping.
I like
no cocktails needed. Yeah. Some dark and stormies, rum and cokes.
Excellent.
Oh, and an iced tea. That sounds good.
Rum and iced tea. Sneaky. It's a sneaky way to enjoy your rum. It's like Bailey's in a coffee cup.
You know, we're headed into a heat wave in Boston too. That doesn't sound like too bad of an idea.
Another one. Here we go. I love it. Excellent. Well, if you guys don't have any more questions, I don't want to keep everybody. I know we're just kind of ticking away at the very end here. Dan, I don't know if you want to take it away.
Yeah. So thanks to everyone for joining us. And Kayla, thank you to you. I know I learned so much, and I'm so excited to add all 3 of these to my at-home bar, which is growing slowly, but I'm definitely going to be adding to that very soon. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and we hope to see everyone on a future 5 to 9 Fest event soon. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you all so much for joining. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.